Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Wald, and thank you for joining me today for this conversation. I think a really important conversation, which I've entitled Microplastics, Alarming Levels Found in Human Brain and What to Do About It. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I also have a PhD degree in holistic philosophy. I'm a board certified nutritionist. I'm a dietitian and sports nutritionist. I also provide acupuncture and life coaching, and I did earn an MD diploma, although I am not licensed to practice medicine. So let's get into this conversation. To begin with, this information is not meant to substitute for sound medical or health advice. It's for your education only. So how microplastics adversely affect the brain? We know something about it, and it has to do with the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is a semi-permeable membrane which surrounds the spinal cord. It lets certain chemicals in and certain chemicals out. But in certain circumstances, toxins can get through that blood-brain barrier. So microplastics can and do penetrate the blood-brain barrier, leading to inflammation and neurotoxicity. Now, neuroinflammation, here's what you need to know about that. Studies suggest that plastic particles trigger an immune response, leading to chronic brain inflammation and potentially may relate to a variety of neurodegenerative disorders. Plastics affect the brain and nervous system in other ways, which I'm about to review with you right now. So, number one, plastics can cause hormonal disruption. So many plastics contain endocrine disrupting chemicals, otherwise known as EDCs, like PBA, which interfere with neurotransmitters and hormone balance, which can impact both mood and cognition. Heavy metal contamination. Microplastics can bind to heavy metals like lead and mercury, increasing their neurotoxic effects. So, increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases have been found with plastics. So chronic exposure to plastics have been linked to Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, which is a movement disorder, and other cognitive disorders due to its neuroinflammatory effects, and almost certainly include dementia. And then there's reduced brain plasticity. So the presence of plastics in neural tissue may impair synaptic connections, reducing learning ability and memory retention. Now, neuroplasticity is just a term that means or refers to the potential of the nervous system to make corrections. Then there's damage to DNA in the brain. Microplastics have been shown to cause specific gene mutations and mitochondrial dysfunction, further disrupting normal brain activity. So mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. It's where our body produces some of our ATP energy molecules, and plastics adversely affect the mitochondria. In terms of neurotransmitters, which are chemicals released by neurons that allow communication between one neuron and then another neuron, you need that synaptic space here, and that's where the neurotransmitters are produced. So microplastic exposure may alter dopamine and serotonin, leading to anxiety, depression, and overall impaired brain function. And then there's a neurodevelopmental impact of plastics. Exposure during pregnancy and childhood may impair brain development, leading to cognitive defects and behavioral disorders. So what happens as soon as the little baby is able to suck, we stick a plastic pacifier in their mouth, so they're sucking on plastic for years. And what about oxidative stress? It's a type of inflammation. Microplastics generate free radicals, increasing oxidative damage to neurons, which accelerates brain aging and further compromising cognitive decline. And I mentioned there's DNA damage too. So we know that plastics disrupt DNA genetic formation. So what can a person do to evaluate themselves and treat themselves for suspected plastics? There are blood and urine tests that I do as part of my blood detective approach to this problem. This sort of advanced testing can detect plastic-derived chemicals such as phthalates and bisphenols, indicating microplastic exposure. And then there's lipid profiling testing. So as plastics accumulate in fatty tissues, specialized lipomotic tests can identify plastic-related compounds in adipose storage sites in the body. And then there's the extreme testing, biopsy and histopathology, where brain tissue biopsies in severe cases have shown in studies plastic deposits and inflammatory markers. And then there's advanced imaging techniques. Research suggests that MRI and spectroscopy could help identify plastic particles in the nervous tissue, in the neural tissue. And then there's inflammation and oxidative stress markers that can be ordered. Elevated levels of C-reactive protein, for example, interleukin-6, and glutathione depletion may indicate microplastics-induced inflammation. And to be perfectly clear on that point, we would see depletion of glutathione and interleukin-6 with plastic exposure, but we would see an increase in C-reactive protein or another related test called C-reactive cardio, or CRP cardio. And then there is cerebral spinal fluid analysis, where during a cerebral spinal fluid tap, the neurologist would remove cerebral spinal fluid, which is fluid that is bathing the brain. So the brain is here, the fluid is here, and then you've got the blood-brain barrier here. And again, the plastics can come through the blood-brain barrier, entering the cerebral spinal fluid, and then through lumbar puncture testing, we can detect plastic contaminants and neurotoxic metabolites in the central nervous system. So that should do it for this brief, but I hope useful discussion of plastics. I've mentioned a lot of the tests here that many doctors don't even know about. And beyond that, I've learned through the experience of some of the people that have seen me, they've asked their doctors to do these tests, and the doctors will not do the tests. They will not do them because, number one, they don't understand plastics. They do not want to do testing and get results that they don't know. That just increases their liability. So it's a number of complex reasons, ignorance and just laziness, that I think that a lot of doctors don't do these tests. But this is a very important area of health, and I think it's probably underlying many of the special needs epidemics that we see, not to mention conditions of the central nervous system. So thank you again for joining me for this presentation, and I hope to see you at another presentation as well.